Hi, my name is Dennis Win. Welcome to my Cloud Native Tech Chat about Istio Service Mesh. Today we are going to look at the invocation or calling of an Istio virtual service under the control of an Ingress gateway. What I'd like to point out is any client requests have to be addressed properly to the virtual service in the first place before getting a chance for redirection to the service mesh workloads behind through traffic management or by other means. More specifically, we'll show how the settings of the host field for a virtual service will affect the way it's handled by the associated Ingress gateway. As we all know, there are two modes of client access to an Istio service mesh. In most cases, we tend to see clients external to the service mesh use an Ingress gateway to access the mesh. In the meantime, those inside the service mesh will rely on the local invoice sidecars throughout to connect to the mesh. Our focus today is on the Ingress gateway access mode. Now, let's head right away to the key takeaway points. An Istio Ingress gateway is governed by two fundamental principles to deal with a new virtual service request. First, to facilitate IP layer communication, obviously, the host part of the URL request must resolve to an external IP or cluster IP assigned to the Ingress gateway itself. Second, the host part of the same request must match the host field settings defined in the virtual service manifest. We use an example to explain these two principles at work. First, a built-in Istio Ingress gateway service is running as a Kubernetes service. Its name is Istio Ingress Gateway. Its type is load balancer, and it is assigned a cluster IP and an external IP as shown here. For the virtual service, we refer to the bulk info sampled app that comes with Istio. Here in this sample, the virtual service is named bulk info. The important part is about the host field of the spec. The host field is set exactly to this FQDN string, gateway.external.com. And the implication is all clients are required to use this given host name to request the virtual service. If we use an IP here instead of the host name in the URL, the request will be simply ignored by the Ingress gateway. It also follows that such a host name, gateway.external.com, should resolve to an external IP or cluster IP assigned to the Ingress gateway. And this is to ensure any client request will arrive at the gateway to get served in the first place. Coming up, we will move on to a hands-on lab, a hands-on demo, where we will try out different settings for the host field of the virtual service spec and see how they play out eventually. I'm going to set up the lab now. Let's catch up in a sec. Hi, welcome back. We are ready to move on to our hands-on demo. Let's check out the demo environment first. It's set up on a Killer Coder lab. The Kubernetes version is 1.26. And the Istio version is 1.16.1. The workloads of the surface mesh are provided by the booked info sample app that comes with Istio. And the workloads belongs to the default namespace. And here are the Istio services, including the Istio Ingress gateway. So pay attention to the custom IP and external IP of the gateway. Also, note that all the Istio services, including the Ingress gateway, are part of the Istio system namespace. So after checking the demo environment, and we are about to do a scenario analysis by experimenting different settings provided for the virtual surface host field. We would like to sort out the addressing of valid or acceptable request URL in each scenario. So in scenario one, the virtual surface host field is set to a plain and simple wildcard asterisk, and that means we don't care about what the host is, as long as it resolves to an external or custom IP of the Ingress gateway. And as a matter of fact, this is the default config for the sampled application. So let's review the virtual surface manifest files that is in use. Yeah. The virtual surface is called info. As you can see here, the host field of the spec is set to a plain wildcard asterisk. So here we would like to use the curl command line to inspect if a given HTTP request can be delivered by the virtual surface through the Ingress gateway. So here, as you can see, control plane is one of the Kubernetes cluster nodes, and it will stage as an external curl command launcher to simulate external access outside the surface mesh. So let us recap the surface details of the Ingress gateway. So, so for external access, we will use the external IP in the request URL. So here is the the command template. So take note of this command template, which will be invoked on the control plane to initiate external access to the surface mesh. So all we have to do is to replace the placeholder with the existing external IP. Yes, we've got the result we expect. So for external access, it can be done through the external IP. And so in the meantime, we will also try to run the same curl commands, but from one of the surface ports in the deployment, and the surface port we chose is ratings. So we will execute a similar curl command on the ratings container to access the virtual surface. But in this case, we will use the cluster IP for internal access. So let me fetch the internal access command template. So this is the curl command template for internal access. So you can see it, we just execute this curl command, but on the ratings container that is inside the surface mesh. So here we substitute custom IP for this placeholder. Yes, and there you go. We also obtain the result we like to see. So just for your information, you can recap. We can also recap the part that's running in the surface mesh. And for the ratings container, that's the one we refer to. So when the virtual surface host field is set to a plain and simple wildcard asterisk, we can use the external IP address or the cluster IP address to connect and to use the virtual surface without any problem. In fact, we can do one better by using host name in the request URL, as long as that host name is mapped to the destination IP, that is the external IP or the cluster IP of the Ingress gateway. So first, let us map the external IP to a given host name in the local host table on control plane. So we give it the name my gateway. My gateway, yeah. So using the local etc host table is just a handy way of resolving the external IP to a host name. This can be accomplished equally well through an external DNS if that's available. So after mapping the IP to the host name, and then we record the command, the curl command for external access, and replace the external IP with my gateway host name. Yeah. Yes, we've got the result we want. So the next step, automatically, we will also like to try the same, try the similar hostname approach for internal access from the ratings port inside the surface mesh. One thing I like to add is that in this case, we don't have to add the mapping of the custom IP to this internal host name of the Ingress gateway explicitly, because that mapping is already well taken care of by the core DNS that comes with the Kubernetes cluster. It means that in the core DNS is already there's already a mappings associating the custom IP with this given Istio Ingress gateway name. So let us recall the curl command for the internal access and replace the custom IP with this Ingress gateway host name, and see if it works. No, we ran into a name resolution error. It means that that the host name can be resolved to the target custom IP on ratings. And the reason is simple enough, because the ratings container belongs to the default namespace, but the target Ingress gateway service is part of the Istio system namespace. So they are in different namespace. So for ratings to be able to resolve the host name of the Ingress gateway, it needs to append the Istio system namespace to this host name, and then it will expect to resolve it to the custom IP. So let's we run the command, but by after appending the Istio system namespace to the internal host name of the Ingress gateway, and the command will be executed on the ratings container. Good, there you go. So so the problem kind of boils down to the to forming a right or a correct host name for the containers to resolve, as long as you can resolve to the custom IP, and then we will be on the right track. So so in this way, the host name should be the internal host name, and then with the namespace, with the Istio namespace appended, and that is the proper host name to be accessed from the ratings container. So that more or less concludes our study of scenario number 1. So in scenario number 2, we will restrict the virtual service spec host to a single host name or a singly worded host named my gateway, and see what sort of request URL will be accepted by the Ingress gateway. We delete the virtual service. Modify the configuration manifest. Yep. On this line, move the asterisk settings and replace it with just a plain and simple host named my gateway without adding any domain suffix or expressing it as a FQDN, just a pure singly worded host name. We also make sure that my gateway is mapped to the external IP of the Ingress gateway. So we apply the new config manifest. Right. Yep. Before we test out the host name to my gateway in the request URL, let's repeat our earlier curl commands for external and internal access to the virtual surface using the external IP, cluster IP, as well as the Istio Ingress gateway host name. So first, we try to access the virtual surface using the external IP. So nothing returns. The request may as well be ignored by the Ingress gateway. So this is the first finding, and the second finding for terminal. Yep, that is the second test is for the internal access, also from the ratings container, using the cluster IP to access the service. Yep, nothing returns as well. Also seem to be ignored by the Ingress gateway. So we also try to use the Istio. Yep, we use the semi-qualified Ingress gateway host name for internal access, and we know that in the previous case, using the wildcard asterisk, this command works, and we see the results we want to see. But how about now? Nope, nothing returns. So that kind of give us give us an idea that if we restrict our host field to a specific host name, then if we use external IP or cluster IP or the internal host name to access the service, they all will come to nothing. So that leaves us with our final test, that is use the my gateway host name to access the service externally. Yes, here. Yes, we can recall, yeah, because we also run exactly the same command in scenario number one, and this command works. So let's see if it also works in this case. Nope, nothing, nothing returns. So even though we've already set the host field to this host name, it seems that the host name to my gateway is not what the Ingress gateway like to see in an acceptable or valid URL request. So let's drill down on the workings of the proxy routes as implemented by the Ingress gateway port. So to this end, we will run the Istio controlled proxy config command on routes. So this is a very useful debugging tools to allow us to look into the internals of the proxy routing situation. First of all, let's get hold of the Istio gateway Ingress gateway port. Yeah, and we will save the port name in this shell variable. Then we can run the command. Istio control proxy config. So here we are. We look at this particular route named HTTP 8080. It captures the bulk of the traffic management workflow for the book info to virtual service. We also observe that it adds only on the FQDN string as shown here. That's what the Ingress gateway like to see in a valid URL request. So the implication is we must spell out this FQDN name in full as such in any URL request in order for them to be served by the Ingress gateway. That's to say, make sure the host part of the URL matches exactly one of the domains titled listed here, no more, no less. So let's try out these FQDN names in a URL request that will be issued from the control plane. But first of all, we need to add this FQDN name or mapped this FQDN names to the external IP in the local host table. So here is the external access to the service mesh from the control plane, and we use this FQDN string as we observed from the output of the proxy config command. So there you go. So it means that even though we only set the virtual surface host field to just a single host named Istio, when Istio receives such a configuration, it will append the default domain suffix to the given host name and inject this whole FQDN string to the routing configuration for the proxy, for the Istio proxy, and also demand that such a full FQDN named must be present in any valid URL request or request URL to be processed. But this is only for testing purpose, because in most cases this string is not what we intend the FQDN of my gateway to be. So we don't intend to append the domain suffix, the default domain suffix to the my gateway host name as a formal FQDN name for my gateway. So that so in that connection, we comes to scenario number 3, where we will set the host field to a customized or user-defined FQDN. So here, instead of a single host name, we will make it a full FQDN. So before we run the curl command to test, let's peep into the proxy routing config as from the Istio perspective. Yep, so we run the same Istio control proxy config command. So now you can see the FQDN string we specified for the host field is now kind of injected as is to the proxy routing config. So it means that Istio does not append anything to the FQDN we specified for the virtual service host field in the manifest. So that probably gives us the hint that if we use this FQDN name in our URL request to access the surface mesh, we should be okay. So or the same command, and then oh, sorry, I missed one more step. I have to map this this FQDN to the external IP on the host table in the first place. Yep, yep, and there you go. Cool. We finally got what we want. So the difference is if we specified a, a FQDN string for the host field of the virtual surface, then Istio will not do anything to modify it or to append anything to this FQDN. It just inject it as is to the proxy routing config. So we can use the FQDN we provide for the virtual surface host in the first place, and then we use it to form our request URL, and then we can access the virtual surface and get the result. So we are now move on to scenario number 4, and as you may recall, in the scenario number 2 and number 3, we only allowed access from outside the surface mesh. So so the internal ports of the surface mesh actually denied access to the virtual surface or to the Ingress gateway. So now in this scenario, we will add this properly configured internal host name of the Ingress gateway to the host field, and we should expect the internal ports to be able to make connections to the Ingress gateway. This is to facilitate the so-called hairpinning connection that internal ports forward request to the Ingress gateway and then back to the internal surface mesh. Yes, you can see the host. This host actually refer to a list, so we can specify a list of of FQDNs or host names to 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 as settings for the host field. Yeah. The good thing is for the internal access, we don't need to add the mappings between this host name and the custom IP manually or explicitly. As I've already mentioned, the mappings is already included or registered with the core DNS of the Kubernetes cluster. Yeah. So we apply the good. So as usual, let's test out the external access. Yep, we've got the result, and then and now we revisit the internal access that is running the curl command on the ratings container. Yep, that's the one. Yep, this is exactly the one we executed before in the previous case. Whew. We got the result we like to see. So yep. So as a matter of fact, we can also take a peep into the routing config of the Istio proxy, because we expect to see the fqdn mygatewayexternal.com and this internal host name Istio Ingress gateway with the namespace appended. We expect to see those two names also exist in the proxy routing config. Yeah, and there you go. Yeah, and these two items are exactly the ones we entered for the host field of the virtual surface. And note that if even for this I mean I call it a partially qualified domain names. At least it's not a single-worded host name. So as long as the names, as long as the host name is not single-worded, then it means that Istio will refrain from appending namespace or appending domain suffix to such names. So it means that this string, this partial qualified strings, as well as the fully qualified domains, will be injected as is to the proxy routing config. So that's the one that we may have to take note of. So we comes to the final scenario. Yep, as you can see, the host field also accept wildcard. But so in scenario 5, we will test out this wildcard expression. It means that our intention is that any host with the domain suffix external.com will be accepted by the Ingress gateway, as long as, of course, the host name itself must resolve to the external IP. But after that, as long as its domain suffix contain external.com, the request will be entertained as usual by the virtual surface through the Ingress gateway. So we will test it with the FQDN names and host name we used earlier. So first of all, let's apply the new configuration. Yep, and then let us let us run the kill command for external access. Also use the mygateway.external.com, and as you can see, mygateway.external.com also match the wildcard expression. Yep. We have the result, and it goes without saying that this one should work as well, because we didn't change anything regarding the Ingress gateway, the internal host name of the Ingress gateway. Cool. So that more or less concludes our scenario analysis of these five particular cases. So let's do a summary of these five scenarios. So for the wildcard, for the plain wildcard scenario, we can see that the acceptable URL host, for instance, outside the surface mesh is the external IP of the Ingress gateway, and also any host name resolved to the external IP will do. And inside the surface mesh is similar, similar verdict, so to speak. Custom IP of the Ingress gateway, and also the host name of the Ingress gateway. And this host name can be resolved through the core DNS, and we need to append Istio system namespace to the host, because the surface mesh resides in the default namespace, not reside in the Istio system namespace. So if we restrict the host field to my gateway, and then there's only one valid host that we can use to access. It's just a FQDN name, with the default domain suffix appended to my gateway. And then if we specified a FQDN string in the host field, then the same FQDN strings can be used in the URL request that will be served or entertained by the Ingress gateway. So the URL host must be mygateway.external.com. And then we specified the external FQDN and also the internal host name with the namespace appended for the host field. And then outside the service mesh, as usual, my gateway.external.com will get served. And inside the service mesh is the same. The URL with the host part being Istio Ingress gateway.istio hyphen system. That request will be served as well. And finally, if we set a wildcard expression for the external FQDN, and then of course any FQDN strings matching the domain suffix external.com, not necessarily my gateway.external.com as we showed earlier. Maybe you can have other names like your gateway.external.com, but the condition is that as long as that particular host name, say your gateway.external.com, is mapped to the external IP, and then your request will get served. So it means that any FQDN string matching the domain suffix, which are also mapped to the external IP through the etc host or DNS, and inside the service, yeah, it's just the same as before, this internal host name. So now there are a few words about the Istio Ingress gateway, and the thing is that similar to a virtual surface, an Ingress gateway manifest also contains a host config for the book info virtual surface. I will show the contents later. And the point is that this is the critical point. The gateway host config must be a superset or inclusive of the virtual surface counterpart. So what does that mean? It means that host name or FQDNs matching the virtual surface spec host should also match the gateway spec host, the gateway spec service.host field. So let's look at these examples. For instance, in the scenario one, if we set the gateway host to this www.others.com and the virtual surface host is as below, then the outcome is expected to be such that the request will be discarded. So the ideal situation is the gateway host specification must include the specification given for the virtual surface host. And that is the case for scenario number 2, and the outcome is expected to be okay. So let's try out these two scenarios and on the lab. So first of all, and then so here let's do an external access. Yes, the request is ignored or no result to return. And do the internal access. Yes, as usual. We can take a peek into the POSI routing config stored on the Istio gateway port. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see it. Everything is turns. Everything is kind of turns into a black hole. So it means that all the URL requests will get discarded under such configuration for the gateway. So let's and then let's rectify the situation, and this is what we mean by having the gateway host config as a superset of its virtual surface counterpart. So as you can see, the specification for the host field in the virtual surface part is kind of included in the config, in the host config for the gateway. So my gateway.external.com and Istio Ingress gateway or Istio hyphen system. So we've got the result we want to see. Order restored. Situation returns to normal. Good. And one final peep into the procedural config. Yep. So we recovered all the familiar host names items here in the proxy config graphs. So you can see first it's gathered. Yeah. See, it's normal. Cool. There you are. So thank you for sticking with me to go through this hands-on demo. So so we get a clear pictures about the settings of the host field in the virtual surface and the relation between the host field settings and the proxy routes that that we will experience in the traffic management. And we also have an opportunity to see what it takes to formulate valid or acceptable URL request so that they can reach the ingress gateway and processed by the virtual surface to produce the desirable result. So thank you for watching, and I hope this demo will increase your understandings about virtual surface and the ingress gateway. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.